Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. That's Ari. I'm Korea. And look, we're already in November. We just had game four of the World Series last night. Astros threw a no hitter, fortunately. Um, basketball, college basketball literally starts in 4 days. College football, we're getting to the final month. Ari, how you doing? We're about a little over halfway through the regular season of the NFL. How you doing right now?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Like you said, it's now a best two or three now in the World Series. Now it's 2-2, so we should have an exciting finish in that series. And then we got the NBA in full swing. Um, our last episode, we had the first release of the college football ranking, so we have that underway. And then now we're heading into Week 9 NFL. And, like we always say, it's kind of crazy how fast the season goes, but we're here.
Yeah, and let's get started. We're going to go through the whole NFL slate, starting with tonight's matchup. It's kind of crazy that the Phillies and Astros are playing in the World Series, and ironically, Thursday Night Football is Philly versus Houston, Eagles versus Texans. Breaking news just came out this morning. Brandon Cooks is not playing due to personal reasons. Obviously, he was one big name in the trade market, as we talked about on Tuesday, that did not get traded, unfortunately, and there's a lot of tension and displeasure there from Brandon Cooks, and he was questionable coming into this game, but he has officially been ruled out as of about maybe 20 to 30 minutes ago from Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter. But talking about the Eagles, look, only undefeated team. They're 7-0. They're pretty much the hottest team offensively. We see what A.J. Brown can do. He put up 3 touchdowns on 3 receptions, over 100-plus yards against that Pittsburgh secondary, and Lord knows what he's going to do to this Houston secondary. But Houston is obviously more lacking in the run game. So what do you expect from Miles Sanders this game? Do you expect a big breakout game for him? And then for offensively for the Texans without Brandon Cooks, do you rely on Dameon Pierce? Obviously, he's been kind of their main offensive weapon for the Texans. Or do you see Davis Mills on the ball to maybe more of a Chris Moore or, someone else in that receiving core?
Yeah, I think the Texans are going to try to establish the run game, but it's possible the game could get, pretty ugly early to where they can't really run the ball down 2-3 scores, by like the third quarter. Pierce is still, involved in the passing games. He'll still be on the field even when they're down, and they also have Burkhead who will be on some third downs. But yeah, I think Field Yates just posted the top 3 right now with also Nico Collins out. It's going to be Philip Dorsett, Chris Moore, and Tyron Johnson. So definitely not, not the most household names starting for Houston at wide receiver this week. So, and even when they had Cooks and Collins, Mills has been kind of disappointing this year compared to last year where he showed flashes, as a rookie. So, the Eagles are, 13.5-point favorites for a reason. They should win this game pretty easily and stay undefeated. The game script should be really good for Miles Sanders, with them leading pretty much the whole game. So, A.J. Brown should, you're starting him every week, obviously. So, it should be another dominant performance for the Eagles, and they should stay undefeated.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Eagles should probably roll through the Texans right now. Texans right now looking like they will be one of the first 3 picks in the NFL draft in 2023. I mean, this Eagles team obviously just trading for Robert Quinn the other week, and just how this team has been built into win now mode, and they're the best team in the NFL right now. If not them, then the Bills. And this Eagles team, they have all the momentum, and they're 13-point favorite for a reason. I agree with you. This is going to be a fun game if you're an Eagles fan. Very, very long game if you're a Texans fan. Moving on, we're going to head into the Sunday morning slate here.
If you're a Texans fan, you're probably just watching the World Series.
Yeah, I want to say, yeah, if you're in Houston, you're not watching this game. You're watching the World Series Game 5 tonight in Philly. But heading into Sunday morning, we have the Los Angeles Chargers coming off their bye week to play the Atlanta Falcons. First place division Atlanta Falcons, I should say at least. Cordell Patterson did return to practice this week for the Falcons, so that could, hint at maybe a change at the running back core in the coming weeks for that Falcons group. Obviously, the rookie Algier was kind of leading that along with Caleb Huntley, but with Cordell Patterson returning to practice this week, that could bring up some questions on what the backfield looking like for the Falcons. And then obviously for the Chargers, it's been an up and down season, a lot of inconsistencies on offense, but a good bye week. They're getting more rest. They're getting more healthy. Obviously, no Mike Williams for this team right now, but it's going to look like, the secondary is going to have to step up. The secondary core, with Joshua Palmer returning as well. Potentially, he's still questionable. There's rumors of, I believe, DeAndre Carter. He's going to be having a big role. Obviously, Keenan Allen's still there. And obviously, Eckler in the pass game is definitely a name to watch out for. Ari, what are you looking for in this game between the Chargers and Falcons?
Yeah, the report came out the other day that Keenan Allen missed practice on Wednesday and he might not play. They said that he played before the bye week against the Seahawks in a limited fashion, and it sounds like during the bye week his hamstring injury got worse. So they could be without Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So that would lead to Joshua Palmer, who cleared concussion protocol, so he should be out there. Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler. If you're super desperate, DeAndre Carter could, like you said, see a bigger role. So, even without Keenan and Mike, Herbert can still get it done against this Atlanta defense that is super banged up. I believe AJ Terrell is still sidelined, I believe. But then we've seen the Falcons kind of control a lot of games with the run game, and the Chargers' run defense has been a little lackluster at times this season. So I expect it to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout at all. I still lean toward the Chargers. I think their offense will be just a little bit too much. But if the Falcons can get Cordell Patterson back, or even with that, and even Algier has been, serviceable in his absence. So I expect Atlanta to keep it close, but I think the Chargers will pull it out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. You mentioned the Chargers' lack of a decent run defense, and then obviously the running back by committee that Atlanta has used ever since both Darrell Williams and Cordell Patterson hit the IR, with Algier and Huntley. That's been a really solid combination. Sometimes it looks like Algier is the lead back, but then Huntley is. But you mentioned that's still going to play a big role for the run game for the Atlanta Falcons this week. I still believe the Chargers may beat them out as well, just because of how depleted that secondary, as you mentioned, already is. Are we losing star cornerback AJ Terrell potentially? And, with how that offense attack is used for the Chargers, I feel like Justin Herbert will just have plenty of time to, just sling the ball downfield. And I believe the Chargers will leave Atlanta with the win. We're going to move on to this next game here in the morning slate. This is the Dolphins traveling to Chicago to play the Bears. Dolphins obviously made the big splash trading for Bradley Chubb and recently giving him that extension. I believe it was 5 years, I think somewhere around $193 million. So he is locked in for Miami. And for the Bears, obviously, they just made a splash. They traded for Chase Claypool, giving up a second-round pick for him. So, two names and two new faces squaring off against each other. But for this Dolphins team, obviously, their offense has been one of the best in football. They have the best duo in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and they've proven to just be unstoppable on offense, even with, playing very good defenses. And then for the Bears, it's more of a lack of offense, but, more of a dominant run game led by David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert in the backfield. Ari, these two teams obviously made some big splashes. Bradley Chubb's going to make his Miami debut. Chase Claypool with his Chicago debut. What do you expect from the Bears offensively? Do you see Chase Claypool having an immediate impact? And then for Miami, what do you see that defense? What do you see that offense looking like now that the Bears obviously lost both Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn? Definitely a big losses in that defense for the Bears. How do you see Miami attacking this Chicago depleted defense with Tua fully healthy now and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle on the outside?
Yeah, it should be another explosion for the Miami offense. Like we've seen pretty much all season when Tua has been healthy. It's obviously always unknown how big of a role a player will have in their first week when they're traded. So I'm sure Claypool will play, but if he'll play a his full role that he'll have, a few weeks from now is obviously not totally known. But I don't think it's going to make a difference, in this game. We've seen kind of the Bears run more of a hot hand approach in the backfield between David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. So I think that they're both going to be utilized a lot. I think they combined, I want to say, for 31 carries, I think it was last week. So they were heavily utilized even when they got blown out by the Cowboys. So I think that they'll both have a big role again this week. And then, we've seen the playbook kind of open up for Justin Fields the past couple of weeks, and he's had a little more success in the passing game. So I'm looking to see if that will continue. But in terms of the pick, I think the Dolphins will roll again. We saw Tony Pollard run all over this defense last week. So it should be a good game script and all that for Raheem Mostert to have a pretty big game. And then obviously Tyreek Hill and Waddle are both, wide receiver 1 for fantasy. And 2 is playing arguably like a top 5 quarterback when he's been healthy this year. So I think the Dolphins will continue their momentum, and the Bears are really just looking to see flashes from Fields to see if he is the future at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of what the Bears are kind of looking for right now. Obviously, the Bears, there's been a lot of questions of, where this offense is heading with, Justin Fields. They thought he was the future. Now there's questions on whether or not he can play the quarterback position. Now they're kind of using him as a running back position. But, we'll see what can happen if they design more plays for him and, involve Chase Claypool. And then obviously for the Dolphins, there was one more name we forgot to mention. That's Jeff Wilson. He obviously recently getting traded to Miami. So you mentioned Mostert, but we can see a duo potentially of Mostert and Wilson just absolutely tear that Bears run defense up like Tony Pollard did last week, probably leaning on Raheem Mostert, who has that breakaway speed in the open field. So I definitely agree with that. I feel like the Dolphins just offensively are way too much to handle for this Bears team, and it's definitely going to be a big game for the Miami Dolphins this week. Moving on into the next game, Carolina Panthers, rebuilding Carolina Panthers, they are going to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. Bengals coming off a really bad Monday night loss, just couldn't find anything offensively without Jamar Chase against the Cleveland Browns on the road. Burrow just could not get it done. He was getting sacked left and right by Myles Garrett. Just no offense really developing for the Bengals. And then for the Panthers, obviously they come up short in their close loss against Atlanta on the road. There was a question on whether DJ Moore would get traded. He did not, so he's staying in Carolina with PJ Walker as the quarterback. Obviously their running back room was led by Christian McCaffrey, but now that he got traded, it's kind of led by potentially Dante Foreman and then Chuba Hubbard. There's questions on whether or not Chuba Hubbard is playing this week. It looks like he is, but there's still a question on who is the lead back. You can point to Foreman, but you can also point to Hubbard as well. Ari, look, for the Panthers, what do you like offensively? And for the Bengals, after a really, really struggling game offensively against the Browns, how do you expect them to bounce back against the Panthers at home?
Yeah, it's always tough in divisional games. They're normally always close, so I'm not too overreactive over that one game. I don't expect the Panthers pass rush to get to Burrow as much as the Browns did last week. So I think it's a good bounce back week for the Bengals. But then the Bengals secondary is also banged up, and I think we can see another pretty solid passing game for PJ Walker, to DJ Moore, potentially Terrace Marshall. So I think this has the potential to be at least a decently high scoring game. I think it would be a good bounce back game, like I said, for Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon. Higgins and Boyd both had the touchdowns last week. That kind of salvaged, their nights, but it was still super disappointing for Burrow compared to expectations. But yeah, I think that the Bengals are in a good spot to bounce back here. Panthers have, been competitive since they traded McCaffrey these past couple of weeks, and think they're going to be competitive in this game as well. But I think Burrow prevails in the end to bounce back.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like this Bengals team just struggled offensively, and it's always divisional games that, are always the hardest just to win because, each team is always knowing each other. They always play each other twice. And for this Bengals team, obviously, they already just lost Jamar Chase, and a lot of people were expecting, guys like T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Hayden Hurst to really step up. And, it's just hard when Joe Burrow has such limited time against a good Browns defense that can get to the quarterback. But you mentioned the Panthers pass rush. And, other than Brian Burns on that defense, there aren't really any big names in the secondary, maybe J.C. Horn as well. But not really any big names for the Panthers in that secondary to really give them any pressure. And you mentioned the Bengals defensively, they're banged up in the secondary as well. So I'd like to see maybe DJ Moore, have a big game, maybe Terrence Marshall as well. And yeah, I agree with that. I think the Bengals hold on for this divisional win, but the Panthers, definitely going to play with their hearts out in this kind of rebuilding phase that they're currently in right now. Heading later into the morning slate here, good old divisional matchup in Detroit, Green Bay versus Detroit, obviously Packers, Lions. Aaron Rodgers knows this team. The Lions know Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has pretty much owned this Lions team for many, many, many seasons. With Hail Mary here and game-winning drive there and all that stuff. Obviously, the Packers coming off a loss to the Bills on Sunday night, where they showed flashes that they can really compete with these top teams in the NFL, but just wide receiver troubles once again, kind of holding this team back. And then for the Lions, obviously a really down season. They just traded away their tight end TJ Hawkinson to the Vikings in the interdivisional matchup, trade, and definitely kind of opens up the field more for guys like DeAndre Swift, who is going to be coming back and have a bigger role along with Jamal Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's still their leading receiver. They still have Josh Reynolds as a solid route runner as well for the Lions. Ari, look, Aaron Rodgers against the Lions is always a good matchup for fantasy owners for Aaron Rodgers, but this year he doesn't have Devontae Adams. What do you expect for a young Packers receiving core to do against this Lions secondary that is one of the worst in football, especially at the run position? Aaron Jones expected to have a big game on the ground. And then for the Lions, we've seen flashes of what they can do. They have a very, very great offense, but can their offense compete with the Packers defense? What do you expect?
Yeah, this is my upset of the week. We've seen in the games where they've had both DeAndre Swift and this could change if Swift doesn't play because he missed practice Wednesday, but I'm assuming he's going to play. We've seen when they've had Swift and Amon-Ra on the field, they've consistently put up 30 plus points, give or take. And obviously the Lions defense is bad, but this isn't the same Packers offense, like you said, that we're accustomed to with Aaron Rodgers. I still think they're going to have success. They're going to run the ball well with Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon against this Lions run defense. But I think in a shootout, I think this Lions offense is more suited than this Packers offense. Just based on what we've seen, I know Aaron Rodgers has dominated the Lions historically. Throughout his career, I should say, and that's why the Packers are still going to be the clear favorite in this game. But this isn't the same Packers offense that we've been accustomed to throughout Rodgers' career. And the Lions defense is really bad, but their offense is suited to be able to keep up and with any team. I feel like in a shootout. And I just haven't seen enough from Rodgers and the receivers, the Green Bay receivers, to feel like they can keep up with the 30 plus points that the Lions have been putting up when they've had both Amon-Ra and Swift on the field. So this is probably my boldest pick, I feel like, but I don't know. I feel like with the way the Packers have looked this year, I feel like it's not that crazy, especially in Detroit, to lean towards the Lions here.
No, I definitely see your point right there. Obviously, the Lions, they are a team that can really compete in a shootout. We saw it last week against Miami, and obviously a good Miami team at home. And now they welcome, the Packers, who offensively are not the same without Devontae Adams this year. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers has been struggling all season to really develop any connection with his wide receiver core. And, we've talked about that, especially with limited opportunities for Dillon and Aaron Jones in the backfield as well. I like that idea of it's going to be very close. A lot of people are leaning toward the Packers, but, there is an argument for the Lions, but I think this is going to be a really, really close game. Probably, honestly, I think this may be the opposite. I think this may be a little bit low scoring just because, this is a divisional matchup. These two teams know each other so well. The Packers, obviously, their defense is capable of stopping I believe can stop maybe a Lions offense that has been shut out before by the Patriots. But they were missing so many players in that game. But at the same time, always divisional matchups always are, a little low scoring. And I believe this is going to be low scoring as well. But, it's going to come down to the wire. And I believe that the Lions could potentially upset the Packers at home just because of how, versatile that offense really is. I agree with you. So many weapons on the Lions offense, and I think that may be a big difference. And I have the Lions barely scratching by the Packers in a very, very close, low-scoring game as well. Definitely, that's one of my boldest predictions of the week as well, along with you. Moving on in this morning slate, we have Indianapolis heading to New England to play the Patriots. Indianapolis, I mean, their season's just been a very, very weird season. Obviously, Matt Ryan went down early, and then they bring in Sam Ehlinger, and, it looked like Sam Ehlinger was going to be, the next guy. They were having a pretty good game against the Washington Commanders last week, but then, the Commanders come back as of late, kind of halted a Colts win, and then they got to 500. And then for the Patriots, they definitely got a big win, bounce back win against the Jets, who were, it's kind of crazy. The Jets were favored against the Patriots to win, and the Patriots, they just stopped them on all sides of the ball, very, pretty much limiting the run game for the Jets. And then, Zach Wilson forcing 3 interceptions against him, that's just not going to do it anymore. And so now they have to welcome a good Indianapolis team, obviously. Offensively, there's questions about Jonathan Taylor, who missed practice with an ankle. So there's rumors that Deion Jackson may have a big role against the Patriots, and then for the Patriots, obviously it's kind of more the Bailey Zapp and Ramondre Stevenson show on offense. Jacoby Myers had a decent game last week, but I don't expect that consistency heading into this week against the Colts, who will probably be healthy in the secondary. Ari, look, Jonathan Taylor has had a really, really bad season this year, just not living up to the expectations as he had when he was the number 1 running back. And then for the Patriots, it's, kind of trying new things, a new regime. Bailey Zappi, the quarterback, maybe Mac Jones may have an appearance, Ramondre Stevenson leading the backfield, even though they still have Damian Harris. What do you expect in this offense? What do you expect offensively for both of these two teams in this game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, there's the question mark of Jonathan Taylor after he missed practice on Wednesday. Sam Ehlinger looked, efficient in this past week. He's not gonna win you a game, but he didn't turn the ball over. But this is going to be a much tougher contest. On the road against Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Obviously, the Patriots defense has been inconsistent. They against the Bears, they didn't look great, but then they've looked great. They looked great other times this season. So I'm going to be interested to see how Belichick does, what he does to try and stop Ehlinger. And then on the Patriots side, we got Mac Jones and Jacoby Myers has been pretty good the past couple of weeks. And then you got Ramondre Stevenson, who's kind of taken over the backfield in New England. Then with Harris is healthy now, but he's kind of been number 2. But I don't see the Colts having enough offense to take this game. If Taylor's sidelined, I know you mentioned Deion Jackson. He caught 10 passes when he started several weeks ago when both Taylor and Hines are out. And even if Taylor plays, Deion Jackson probably plays a role in the passing game regardless. So that would be interesting to see how that plays out. But, yeah, I got the Patriots here at home. I don't think that the Colts are going to have quite enough offense. Patriots don't have the best offense either, but I think they're going to be able to do just enough to take this in what should be a pretty low-scoring game.
I definitely agree with you. This is going to be a low-scoring game. You mentioned Deion Jackson out of the backfield, catching 10 passes last week. And if Jonathan Taylor's out, I feel like, he's going to have a bigger role as well. But, these offenses are struggling this year, just really developing, a solid offense to move down the field. I believe the Patriots hold on as well at home against the Indianapolis team that, is still, and we've talked about Sam Ehlinger. He's not really a game leader. He's more of a game manager. He definitely can just move down the field comfortably and, is efficient, but, not, like you said, not efficient to win the game. And that's why I believe the Patriots are going to hold on at home. And I believe Ramondre Stevenson just does what he does, and he's been really kind of leading that backfield, and I think he's going to continue to lead that backfield once again and get the win for the Patriots at home. Heading into our next morning game, this game is very interesting. The Bills and the Jets. This is, I wouldn't want to say the Bills first true division test after the Dolphins, but I mean it kind of is after they lost to the Dolphins earlier this season. Now they have to go play. I believe this is in this is in New Jersey, right? This is at East Rutherford, right?
Yeah.
This is at MetLife. So the Bills going to MetLife to play the Jets. Bills, obviously, we talked about them beating the Packers on Sunday night, and the Jets. They came off a close but disappointing loss to the Patriots. Were a game that they pretty much could have won, but Zach Wilson forcing 3 turnovers is not going to really get you any wins that way. Look, Ari, this is the matchup that I really want, just offensively, because we get to see Stephon Diggs against Sauce Gardner, and Sauce Gardner's been one of the more lockdown cornerbacks this year. And Stephon Diggs and his route running ability, that makes him a top 5 receiver in the NFL. And then obviously the Bills just trading for Nyheim Hines, so that's definitely a big rolling out of the backfield alongside Devin Singletary and James Cook. Sorry, I forgot his name for a second. Those two. Devin Singletary obviously leads the backfield, but Nyheim Hines' pass catching ability really elevates this offense to a new level because of obviously of what the Bills' offense is, which is just throwing the ball. Ari, look, this is definitely going to be one of the more intriguing matchups to watch in the morning slate. We get to see Stephon Diggs versus Sauce Gardner. We get to see a good Bills team against a really rising Jets defense that can really turn over the ball and force 3 and outs. What do you expect from this game offensively between the Bills and Jets?
Yeah, I mean, this one I'd be more looking forward to if they have Breece Hall and Elijah Tucker healthy. They're kind of starting to build around Hall in the run game. And, Michael Carter and James Robinson are both, serviceable, but neither of them, have the explosion that you get from Breece Hall. So the Jets defense has been really strong this year, and I think that they could do their best to kind of keep them in the game, but I don't think they're going to have enough offense, in the end to keep up with the Bills, even if the Jets defense, does their best to, limit Josh Allen. I think, between Diggs, Gabe Davis, Austin Knox, and then now you got Nyheim Hines, out of the backfield. I think it's going to be a little bit too much, for the Jets in the end. I mean, we saw Wilson threw, 3 picks, I think, last week. So Bills are probably going to be super aggressive and, blitz a lot. And I think that it's going to, it's going to get to them. I think the Bills are going to roll pretty easily in this one, just too much offensively for Buffalo, for Zach Wilson to keep up.
Yeah, and you mentioned how last week you could really see how the Jets were missing Elijah Tucker and Breece Hall. Just really couldn't find anything offensively. Zach Wilson forcing turnovers, and now they're playing pretty much a better defense that is getting healthier with Tre'Davious White returning to practice, and I believe he is, questionable for Sunday, or there's a rumor that he could play. So that defense could be just getting better and better. And then obviously for the Bills, I just feel like the Jets defensively can, keep up with them. But offensively, I just don't think the Jets really have enough to really get the win. I have the Bills, pulling out a decent win on the road against the Jets. But the Jets are definitely going to be, competing defensively to try and get this win with Robert Saleh as their head coach, obviously. So I expect a really good defensive game from both sides. Heading into our next game here, the Vikings visit the Commanders. Vikings, obviously, one of the best teams in the NFC right now, 6-1. They just traded for TJ Hawkinson, so now that offense has, big name stars like Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. They have Madison in the backfield, obviously trading for TJ Hawkinson. And it all kind of depends on how Kirk Cousins just throws the ball. And, he has so many options to feed. And for the Commanders, obviously, they had a comeback win against the Colts on the road. Great to see Taylor Heineke, kind of go back to that 2020 form where he was, leading this team to a NFC East division win, and then playing against the upcoming then Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the first round. Kind of looks like Taylor Heineke may be the quarterback after all, after, struggling in the beginning half of the season with Carson Wentz, and now he goes on IR. And now Taylor Heineke comes in, and, Taylor McLaurin has that resurgence of offense again. The running back committee is definitely going to be interesting to see who is the lead back, because right now it looks like it's Antonio Gibson on paper, but then Brian Robinson also is getting his carries in. Ari, what do you like offensively for the Vikings against this Commanders defense? And then for the Commanders, do you expect Taylor Heineke and Taylor McLaurin to really have some good games against this Vikings defense?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, all we asked Carson Wentz to do was to throw the ball to McLaurin, and we're seeing what McLaurin can do if he's given the opportunity with Heineke throwing the ball. So no reason to believe why he won't have, a big game. And we saw the Cardinals, receivers have big games against the Vikings last week. And then, the Commanders defense has been pretty solid, but they haven't really faced an offense like Minnesota, recently. So I don't think the Vikings are gonna have any issue, getting the job done themselves. Jefferson, Cook, Thielen. We'll see what kind of role Hawkinson has. Like I said before, we don't really know in the first week. With the new team, we don't know what a player's role is going to be. But Hawkinson should at least play, at least a little bit. And even if he plays a little bit, that's enough to make a difference. So yeah, I think the Vikings are going to continue to roll. I think the Commanders can score enough to, keep it competitive. And I think this game might be kind of like in the 20s, kind of in that range. But I think the Vikings offense will be too much. Their offensive firepower will be too much for Washington in the end.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I feel like this Vikings offense is going to be too powerful. They obviously just acquired a big name in TJ Hawkinson. They already had Justin Jefferson, who's arguably one of the best receivers in football. They have Adam Thielen, who's a solid 2. They have Dalvin Cook out of the backfield, who's a great RB1, and then Alexander Madison, who also brings that similar play style to Dalvin Cook. Commanders defense you mentioned is good, but I just don't know if they're good enough to handle an offense like this. But then for the Commanders, obviously, we talked about how you mentioned Carson Wentz's only real job was to throw the ball to Terry McLaurin, and he really struggled to develop a connection with him. And then Heineke comes in after Wentz goes down, and all of a sudden it's like the resurgence of Terry McLaurin all over again. He had a big game last week, and I could have a big week again, as you mentioned. The Cardinals last week, D-Hop and Rondale Moore had some good games against this Vikings defense. So I expect this game in the 20s as well, but I also expect the Vikings just to outman them offensively and get the win on the road. And then finally, I think this is the final morning game of the week. The Raiders visiting the Jaguars. The Raiders, obviously, wow, what a week for them. They got shut out by the New Orleans Saints defense on the road. Just no offense. Derek Carr looked absolutely miserable in that pocket. Couldn't find anything. Really struggled to develop his connection with Adams, out in the open. So it was just locked down for that defense for the Saints. But now they expect to bounce back, now being 2-5 against the 2-6 Jaguars. Obviously they come off a bad loss on not bad loss on the road, but bad loss in London, which was a home game against the Denver Broncos, where the Jaguars really struggled offensively. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, really couldn't develop himself. It was a great day for Travis Etienne, obviously on the ground, who is kind of emerging as that lead back and kind of the focal point of the offense. But the receiving and the receiving core had a lackluster day because the passing had a lackluster day. So, what do you expect, Ari, for a resurgence for kind of both of these offenses? The Raiders getting shut out, and the Jaguars, not really developing anything against a really bad Broncos offense last week in London. What do you expect offensively for both of these teams trying to bounce back after their bad losses last week?
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders went from, dropping almost 40 points on Houston to, getting shut out, like you said, by the Saints last week, and they never really seemed to have a pulse, never really seemed to have a chance in that game last week. But fortunately, Jacksonville's defense is closer to Houston, than New Orleans. I think that the Raiders do bounce back, and hopefully Adams is more healthy. I mean, he was battling an illness, which he kind of still is, but hopefully he's more healthy this week than he was last week. Jaguars, and we're seeing the ascension of Travis Etienne now that he is, the full workhorse in that backfield. The Raiders secondary is definitely beatable, so I think Christian Kirk could be in line for a solid game. Evan Ingram. So I think this is going to be a decently high scoring game against, between two, below average defenses, I would say. But I like the Raiders to bounce back here overall. I think, obviously Derek Carr is super inconsistent, but I think that they're going to get Josh Jacobs back and going, on the ground against Jacksonville. And then we'll see if they have Darren Waller. He's still, silent at practice, so we'll see if he returns. But I think getting Adams back, hopefully more healthy, and Jacobs more established in the running game, will help the Raiders' offense bounce back in the end.
Yeah, I feel like the Raiders are definitely going to be bounced back more. You mentioned Houston's defense is similar to Jacksonville's and is, not the great against the, just not great in general. But the Raiders obviously, it's funny how these two teams really matched up in the preseason in the first game, and now here we are, in November facing each other again in the regular season. The Raiders obviously getting shut out. I believe I know Devontae Adams is going to have a bounce back week. You mentioned Josh Jacobs and how he has been a really big factor for that offense. Definitely going to be interesting to see what they do in the offseason since they did not pick up his fifth-year option. So obviously Josh Jacobs is playing like his career's on the line, and he's definitely impressing this year. And then you mentioned Darren Waller, who is obviously sidelined right now, but he potentially could come back. There's still some rumors there, but I feel like this Raiders offense is definitely going to be resurging after not having a single point scored last week. They're definitely hungry to get in the end zone and to just even get some points on the board. So I feel like this Raiders team is going to be coming out with a bigger pulse and getting the win this week against the Jaguars on the road. And heading into the afternoon slate, the one of two afternoon games on Sunday, are Seahawks going down to Arizona to play the Cardinals. Seahawks, one of the best teams offensively. Geno Smith, you could say he is that guy. He is that dude. They still ain't riding back. It's crazy. Look, this team offensively is, really just gelling at the right time. Kenneth Walker on the ground is one of the best backs, one of the best rookie backs that I've seen in a while. That offensive line has just been really, really solid all year, especially the two tackles on the edge with Charles Cross, the first-round selection, and then Abraham Lucas out of course, Wazoo, the third-round selection. And then, DK still having, some great connection with Geno. And DK, it looks like the Seahawks are just having fun out there. And you can credit that to the offseason trade or whatever, but this team is really just having fun out there. They're 5-3. They're breaking expectations. They're going to a Cardinals team that came up just short against the Vikings last week, obviously. But the last time, this is the second. It's crazy that this is the final matchup the Seahawks and Cardinals are having this year. Obviously, the Cardinals get back DeAndre Hopkins after the Seahawks played them without him. And last time they had played them in Seattle, Kyler Murray really struggled to develop any offense. So it's definitely going to be a different story this week now that Kyler Murray has his number one option back on the field for another consecutive week. And you see how Rondale Moore is really getting under his own feet and, really developing himself as a good wide receiver 2 option for Kyler Murray. Ari, look, this is definitely going to be one of the more offensive games this week, in my opinion. Seahawks deep, but, obviously division games are low scoring. Seahawks offense, one of the best in the country and just, really developing themselves. And then the Cardinals offense really getting themselves under their own foot. What do you expect in this division matchup?
Can you hear the leaf blower in the back, or is it?
Barely.
Okay. All right. So they announced the players of the month this morning from October, and the Seahawks pretty much cleaned house almost. Kenneth Walker and Tariq Woolen won the rookie offensive and defensive player of the month, and Geno won offensive player of the month. So, that shows you, how well the Seahawks played on both sides of the ball. The past few weeks, we've seen the resurgence of the Seahawks defense. And it started when these teams played in Seattle a few weeks ago when the Cardinals scored 9 points and 6 of them came on a blocked punt in the end zone. So, you mentioned Hopkins. He wasn't playing in that game, so obviously he makes a big difference, for Kyler Murray and the Cardinals offense. But I mean, Hopkins had a huge game last week against the Vikings, and Cardinals still lost. So I think Hopkins can have his numbers, and they can still lose. And I think that's kind of what I'm expecting. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Seahawks defend Hopkins. Do they kind of leave Tariq Woolen, the rookie, one-on-one with him and let them test him, or do they kind of roll over, help on Hopkins? So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray is a great fantasy quarterback. He's a good, stats quarterback, but not. I don't view him as a winning quarterback. They obviously have Cliff Kingsbury, who has a lot of question marks himself. So, surprisingly, the Cardinals are the favorite in this game, and I know some people will, read lines and think that they're going to win because of that, but I don't see it. I think the Seahawks will continue to roll and win. I think this would be their fourth straight win, I want to say. I think it's going to be more high scoring than it was in Seattle, where it was 19-9. Like you said, so it should be a little bit more offensive shootout. The Seahawks historically play well in Arizona. Historically, Tyler Lockett is the one that always has huge games. Obviously, that was always with Russell Wilson. So take that with what you want. But I think the Seahawks just have a more consistent offense. And with the way their defense has been playing the past few weeks, shutting down Barkley last week, they held their own against Herbert the week before, and they shut down the Cardinals, a few weeks ago. So I think that's actually going to be a little bit too much, and they're going to finish off a sweep of the Cardinals here this week.
I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like this Seahawks offense, is definitely gelling at the right time. Whether it's Geno Smith or the former quarterback Russ back there, Tyler Lockett, I feel is still going to have a big game. Geno Smith just looks like he is so comfortable in that pocket. His O-line has his back, and he can just scramble out and, do whatever he wants to do. And, he can pick apart that Cardinals defense that really got picked apart last week by the Vikings on the road. And then obviously for the Cardinals, you mentioned the matchup of the week is going to be DeAndre Hopkins going probably against Tariq Woolen. You mentioned it'll be interesting to see how the Seahawks really make sure that Hopkins is limited, whether that's having help in the back with Woolen or having Woolen just go one-on-one. I feel like they may test him out one-on-one early just to see what that matchup is going to be looking like, but we'll see how it works in the end. But in the end, even though Arizona is still the favorite, it's only 2 points, so that's really meaning that it could go either way. I have Seattle winning this offensive shootout down and sweeping the Cardinals to get their 6th win of the season. And before we move on, I just want to say the projected win total for Seattle was heading into the season was 5. And if they can get 6, then, we can shut up all those haters out there and all those clowns who said that they're going to go 0-17. Moving on to this next game here in the final afternoon spot, two teams that are really on the decline. And it's crazy to say that these two teams are really on the decline, but it's the Rams and Bucks. Obviously, Rams defending Super Bowl champions, really struggling this year offensively. They're missing O-line help, and it's really showing right now. The retirement of Andrew Whitworth and, they're shuffling around on the offensive line has really proven to be a really big factor for them. And, the run game, obviously, we talked about Cam Akers, leaving the team, but then they tried to trade him, but then they couldn't trade him, and now they're going to try and bring him back. Darrell Henderson was sick, so they had to rely on a rookie who, I don't even know his name, but and then we move on to the Buccaneers, and it's kind of the same story. They are missing big offensive tackles. Brady doesn't have that much time in the pocket. Fournette obviously on the ground is doing what he usually does. And he's been a lot more involved in the pass game as well for Brady. Godwin's getting himself now that he's healthy. Evans the same way. It's kind of crazy that these two teams are kind of missing the same components, and that's just a suitable offensive line to protect either Matt Stafford or Tom Brady. Look, Ari, these two teams face each other in the divisional round last year, and the Rams escaped the Bucks by a Cooper Kupp comeback win. And it's the first time these two are facing each other since. But these two teams are different. Obviously, both teams under 500. The Rams, obviously, offensive line has been a struggle, and their run game has definitely been one of the bigger things. But that defense is still one of the more legit defenses in the NFL. And then on the opposite side, for the Bucks. Defense is still the same. Even though they just lost Shaq Barrett for the rest of the year, that's a big loss. But they still have Vita Vea up front and Jason Pierre-Paul. What do you expect in this game where, we expected these two teams to be at the top of the divisions and now are kind of in the middle and under 500?
Yeah, I'm like completely 50-50 on this game. Like you said, two teams spiraling in the wrong direction. I think we're going to see a lot of sacks in this game. Both offensive linemen struggling, and both quarterbacks aren't the most mobile. You can say so. I think we could see 3 to 4 or 5 sacks from both teams. The Rams. I mean, obviously, historically against the 49ers in the regular season, they've lost 8 straight. So I mean, it wasn't shocking they lost, but it's kind of how they lost that made it look even worse. I mean, they scored 14 points in the first half and nothing, in the second half. And that was without Debo, 2 on the field for San Francisco. So, but then, you have the Bucs offense struggling really as well, coming off the loss, right? It was the Ravens last Thursday, where they just really couldn't get any rhythm going either. And that's kind of been the story of the whole season for the Bucs for the most part. It's just been the lack of consistency for Brady. They have injuries, so you can attribute to that. But I mean, even Brady, some of the throws he had did not look like his normal self. So I think this is going to be a relatively low scoring game. I'm leaning towards Tampa Bay at home, but like I said, I'm like completely 50-50, and not because both teams are good, but because both teams are just trending in the wrong direction. And one team should figure it out in this game, but it's also possible that both teams continue to struggle, and whoever makes less mistakes, will come out on top.
Yeah, that's kind of the story of this game here. I mean, you have the Rams who, are coming off a Super Bowl win, but you mentioned offensively struggling. I agree with you. This is going to be a very defensive game. The sacks are going to pile up and up for both teams. I'm 50-50 too. I want to say the Bucs at home just because, it is a home game, and, the Bucs have a somewhat better offense than the Rams right now. But then the Rams know how to get to Brady. And then you've mentioned Brady has not had some good throws this season, along with just, the struggles offensively at the line. And then for the Rams, Cooper Kupp is still a big question. He had a high ankle sprain last week against the Niners, and he has been ruled questionable, but there's believed that he's going to be playing Sunday against the Bucs. But even if he's out, then I have to go with the Bucs because Cooper Kupp is more of the undeniable X factor for the Rams offense. So I want to say the Bucs, but I can't really count the Rams out because they know how to play this team in their away stadium. So I want to say the Bucs, but I can't really rule out the Rams either. I believe this is going to be one of the more defensive games of the week. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Tampa Bay is like a 3-point favorite. So, even Vegas thinks it's going to be a toss-up. So, you mentioned it's not really going to be a team really turning it around. I feel like it's going to be whoever makes the least amount of mistakes. And I think that's going to be the Buccaneers in this afternoon game. And then finally, we have our Sunday traveling to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. Both teams are 5-2, but the Chiefs just look better offensively than this Titans team. Obviously, the Titans, I believe, I don't know what the health is on Ryan Tannehill, but I mean, right now, Malik Willis was running the show, and it wasn't really the Malik Willis show last week. It was the resurgence of Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry, I mean, good Lord, as someone who was facing him in fantasy last week, I see you smiling over there with your big win. It was rough to see Derrick Henry just absolutely destroy the Houston Texans defense, but he does that every time he faces them, and Houston always has a really bad run defense. But now they're playing the Chiefs, obviously, and I feel like Derrick Henry may be limited to really get outside and develop himself. And then for the Chiefs, obviously coming off a bye, we get to see Kadarius Toney make his Kansas City debut after they had their bye last week. So we get to see Kadarius Toney on the field. They still have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Mecole Hardman, Travis Kelce as the big X factor. this Chiefs team offensively is still one of the best in the country. And this Titans offense, I just don't know if they're really going to be able to compete if Derrick Henry is stopped. And I feel like that's what they're going to be doing for the Chiefs. Ari, what do you expect? Do you expect a decline from Derrick Henry this week in terms of fantasy? And then for the Chiefs, what do you like to see offensively? And what do you think of Kadarius Toney? Do you think he may have a bigger role than a lot of people are thinking for that Chiefs offense?
Yeah, and I think regression is inevitable for Henry coming off 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns. There's 32 carries against Houston, where he was basically the whole offense. Ryan Tannehill did some things in practice on Wednesday, so we'll see if that continues and if he can return, because they're not going to win this game. I mean, I think either way they're not going to win this game, but the Chiefs aren't going to let Henry beat them, like he did against Houston, I should say. Yeah, I mean, this offense is crowded in Kansas City, so I think Tony will have, his plays. But I mean, between the running backs, Juju, Mecole Hardman, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, obviously Kelsey's the number one. So, I mean, the offense is crowded to where Tony's not going to have – I don't think he's going to have, like, a huge role. But between getting the ball in open space and downfield, like you see with Hardman and MVS have their flashes of big plays, I think we'll see this kind of same type of role from Tony where, Kelsey and Juju are still the top two, and then it's normally one, sometimes two of Hardman, MVS, and then now Tony that can, have a big play in a given week. So that's kind of what I'm expecting from him. But, Henry coming out with 32 carry performance. You would think that he's going to see a lot less carries this game, where they're probably going to be playing from behind. The Titans are. And the Chiefs, I think, should roll pretty easily here at home at Arrowhead. Their offense is going to be too much, whether it's Malik Willis or Tannehill under center for the Titans. Just not enough, receiving in the passing game for Tennessee. Just not enough firepower to keep up with Mahomes and the Chiefs here.
I agree with you on all forms. I don't think this Titans offense is going to compete with Mahomes and the Chiefs offensively. But you mentioned Derrick Henry. He's definitely going to be due for regression after a 32 carry game on the ground. But I definitely agree with you. I just don't think I just don't think the Titans will have enough to get it done. And I believe that the Chiefs will definitely win this game pretty handily in Sunday Night Football. And heading into our final game of the week, this is on Monday night next week. The Ravens travel to New Orleans to play the Saints. Ravens obviously getting the win on Thursday night against the Buccaneers on the road. Or was that at M&T Bank? I forgot where that game was, but that's the point. Lamar Jackson still was able to get it done.
I think it was in Tampa, I think.
Yeah, the game was in Tampa. Yeah, Lamar Jackson still able to get it done. Definitely a big question about the run game in terms of, how that backfield was looking. There was rumors that Kenyon Drake's going to be the lead guy. There was rumors about, just other people in that backfield. But, definitely Lamar Jackson will still be forever the lead back for the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, Mark Andrews, there's been questions about him and his health. But I expect him to have a bounce-back game as well. For the Saints, they just shut out, the Raiders at home. And, Andy Dalton has been looking somewhat decent in his time replacing Jameis Winston. I feel like that's going to continue for the Saints. And, there's Alvin Kamara. There's the question about him and, what his offensive outlook's going to be this game and against the Ravens defense that just got Roquan Smith. So we get to see Roquan Smith make his debut in that linebacker core and the defensive front. Ari, what are you expecting in this game? Obviously, the Ravens have pretty much all the momentum right now. They're leading the AFC North right now. They have one of the best offenses in the league, just in terms of how they run the ball, obviously. But obviously the Saints know that, and they're probably going to stack the box as much as they can. And obviously the Saints defense coming after a shutout. How do you expect the Saints to really, carry that momentum into a bigger matchup like the Ravens?
Yeah, I definitely don't expect the Saints offense to have quite the same success against the Ravens as they did against the Raiders. Like you said, Dalton has been, I think, more serviceable than most would have expected. So that that's kind of kept the Saints' offensive flow. But I mean, they're still super banged up, offensively. And then, like you said, the Ravens, Stevens got stronger with Roquan Smith. In the backfield, we'll have to kind of monitor Gus Edwards. He got hurt last Thursday and he's still kind of questionable to play this week. Like you said, if he is out, Kenyon Drake kind of would be the next man up along with Justice Hill as they continue to wait for J.K. Dobbins to return from his injury. I think we're going to see more running from Lamar Jackson. I think we're going to see last week, kind of later in the game, he starts to run a little bit more, but I think we're going to see him run a little bit more kind of early in this game. They're also going to be without Rashad Bateman for a few weeks, and Mark Andrews is banged up as well. So kind of both sides are banged up offensively. So we could see a bigger role for Isaiah Likely, Devin Duvernay in the Ravens passing game. Not guys that are super reliable, but I mean, there's a lot of teams on bye this week, so a lot of people in desperate situations where those types of players could be, serviceable plays as, wide receiver 3 or flex, or even tight end with Likely if Andrews is indeed out this week. So we'll kind of have to keep an eye on all of that. In this game, I'm leaning towards Baltimore. I think that they're going to be a little bit too much offensively for the Saints, even though, like I said, Dalton's looked really solid. And, I think he can have another at least decent game, but I don't think Kamara's, I think he had, 3 touchdowns last week, I think. So I don't think that continues against the Ravens. So, it should be an interesting game, I think, on both sides. But I'm leaning towards Baltimore in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. You mentioned Lamar Jackson late last game, getting a lot more involved in the running game as he usually is. And you mentioned Rashad Bateman's going to be out for a little while, and then, Mark Andrews is still banged up. And I would love to see, how Lamar Jackson can just use his legs, and that's what he's known for. And, he's definitely going to be able to use his legs a lot more, if Mark Andrews is banged up as well, but, he still has Devin Duvernay as an option in the second for Lamar Jackson. But I agree with you. I feel like this Ravens team is just going to be a lot more different play style than what the Saints were expecting last week with the Raiders, obviously. And that's why I have the Ravens winning this game on the road on Monday night. Lamar Jackson will be able to get it done just with his legs, and I feel like it's definitely going to be a big factor in that matchup. We have one comment from Eric. He said, I just sat here and thought of what if Arizona is starting to use Isaiah Simmons like Micah Parsons and see will it work? Look, obviously Isaiah Simmons has kind of been a big X factor for the Arizona Cardinals pretty much as soon as they drafted him. We knew his ability coming out of the Clemson, him being in the secondary, him being at the line, him being in that linebacker core. Obviously, that's more of a coaching decision. I don't know if they're going to use him in that kind of way just because of how that defense is kind of just different looking right now. Obviously they lost Henry Jones, so they may want to put him at the line, but obviously that secondary is, not the strongest I know, so they may want to put him in the secondary, but, they really need him at the linebacker front to really guard the middle of the field. So, that's more of a coaching thing. Right now, I'm not obviously in the Arizona locker room, so I wouldn't know, but, it is definitely an interesting thought, with how versatile Isaiah Simmons really is. It's really a big question of where they may put him. May use him as an X factor like Dallas is using with Micah Parsons. Ari, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that changes need to be made for Arizona on both sides of the ball. And like you said, that starts at coaching, and I don't really trust Kingsbury to do, the quote-unquote right thing for this team. I think by this time next year, if not sooner, there's a good chance he's going to be gone, from Arizona. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting thought if they were to try to make changes, but I don't really think Kingsbury's in the position right now to where he's going to make changes like that. But, obviously we have no control, obviously, over what teams do with players. So we can only kind of wonder what might happen if a team did A or did B or whatever. So it's definitely an interesting thought.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thought. It definitely will be interesting to see how the Seahawks, if the Arizona Cardinals do attack, if they use Simmons like that, it'll be interesting to see how Seahawks may be able to rebound from that. But I think this is going to be it for another episode of AKP Sports Talk. Obviously, we love all of the love that you guys give us. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend, share with your grandma, share with your dog. I don't care. Share with someone. We're just doing this out of our day because we love sports and we love talking about it. But this is going to be it for another episode. We'll be back probably next week to do a big recap of what happens in the NFL this weekend and potentially what happens in college football because, man, do we have a matchup down in Athens this weekend with Georgia and Tennessee. That's definitely going to be one of the bigger matchups of the weekend. We'll recap that, all of the NFL action, and potentially some World Series action if that wraps up as well. But this has been AKP Sports Talk. Matt Ari, I'm Korea. We'll see you guys next week for our recap